Welcome back to a new video. I hope you enjoy it. The house on Willow Lane. There's a house on Willow Lane standing at the edge of the town where the road starts to blend with the forest. It's old, with peeling paint and a sagging roof, the kind of place that kids dare each other to go near but never do. The locals have all sorts of stories about it. Some say it's cursed, others that it's haunted. Most just agree that it's best to stay away, but I didn't believe in curses or ghosts. I didn't believe in much of anything, really, except for cold, hard facts. That's why, when I inherited the house from my great-uncle, I wasn't too concerned. I didn't know him well. He was the black sheep of the family, the one everyone whispered about at reunions but never really talked to. When I got the call from the lawyer, it was more a surprise than anything. I'd just graduated from college and didn't have a job lined up yet, so I figured I might as well check it out. Maybe I could sell the place and get some money. Or maybe if it wasn't too bad, I could fix it up and live there for a while. Free rent, after all, is free rent. The first time I saw the house, it was even worse than I'd imagined. The windows were dark, and the front door hung slightly ajar, as if waiting for someone to push it open. Weeds choked the front yard, and a thick layer of dust coated everything inside. But it wasn't the state of the house that unsettled me. It was the feeling I got when I stepped inside. It felt like the air was heavier, pressing down on me, making it hard to breathe. The silence was thick, almost palpable, and it felt like I was being watched, though I was certain I was alone. I chalked it up to nerves. It was an old house after all, and I was alone in a new place. Of course I was going to feel uneasy, so I got to work. I started cleaning, throwing out the old furniture, scrubbing the floors and patching up the walls. It was hard work, but it felt good. The house slowly but surely started to feel more like mine. But then the dream started. The first one wasn't so bad. I was in the house, but it wasn't the same. The walls were darker, the air colder. I walked through the halls feeling lost until I reached a door at the end of the hallway. It was a door I hadn't seen before, and when I opened it, there was nothing but darkness beyond. I woke up in a cold sweat, but I figured it was just stress. I'd been working hard after all. The second dream was worse. I was in the house again, but this time I wasn't alone. There was something in the darkness, something watching me, following me as I walked through the halls. I couldn't see it, but I could feel it. Its cold breath on the back of my neck, its eyes boring into my back. I tried to run, but no matter how fast I went, I could still feel it behind me, getting closer and closer until I woke up, gasping for air. I started hearing noises after that. At first it was just creaks and groans, the sounds any old house makes. But then I started hearing footsteps, soft and slow, pacing the hallways at night. I would lie in bed, holding my breath, listening as they came closer and closer to my door. Sometimes I would hear whispering, just on the edge of hearing, like someone was talking just out of sight. But whenever I got up to check, there was nothing there. I told myself it was just my imagination. I was alone in a big empty house. Of course I was going to hear things, but it didn't stop. In fact, it got worse. The footsteps became louder, the whispers more insistent. I started finding things out of place. Doors that I knew I'd closed were open. Objects moved from where I'd left them. Once, I came home to find the front door wide open, though I was sure I'd locked it before I left. And then there was the mirror. I found it in the attic, buried under a pile of old clothes and boxes. It was old, with an ornate wooden frame carved with strange symbols. The glass was cloudy, but when I looked into it, I thought I saw something moving behind me. When I turned around, there was nothing there, but the feeling of being watched was stronger than ever. I didn't want to take it downstairs, but I couldn't leave it where it was either. So I moved it to the guest room and covered it with a sheet. But even then, I could feel it, like the mirror was watching me, even through the walls. That's when I started seeing things out of the corner of my eye, shadows moving in the mirror, faces in the windows. I would turn, but there was never anything there. I was jumpy, paranoid, and I knew I wasn't sleeping well. I started leaving the lights on at night, just to keep the darkness at bay, but it didn't help. If anything, it made it worse. One night I woke up to the sound of something scratching at my bedroom door. It was slow and deliberate, like nails dragging across the wood. My heart was pounding, but I forced myself to get up and open the door. There was nothing there, just the empty hallway. But when I turned back to my room, I saw something that made my blood run cold. The sheet over the mirror was gone. I don't know why I did it, but I walked over to the mirror, compelled to look into it. The glass was clear now, too clear, and I could see myself perfectly. But there was something wrong. My reflection was smiling, even though I wasn't. It was a slow, twisted smile, one that stretched my face in ways it shouldn't. Then it spoke. "I've been waiting for you." The voice wasn't mine, it was deeper, darker, and it echoed in my head, making me dizzy. I stumbled back, tripping over the rug, and when I looked up again, the reflection was gone. It was just me, staring back at myself, pale and terrified. I ran out of the room, out of the house, and into the night. I didn't stop running until I reached the town, until I was surrounded by lights and people. I must have looked insane, but I didn't care. I just needed to get away. I stayed in a motel that night, and the next morning I went back to the house with a few friends. I needed to get my things and leave, and I didn't want to do it alone. When we got there, the house was silent, the air heavy like before, but the mirror was gone. The whole room was empty, as if it had never been there in the first place. I moved out that day. I didn't take anything with me except the clothes on my back. I didn't care about the money or the house. I just wanted to be as far away from it as possible. But it hasn't ended. I still see things out of the corner of my eye, reflections that don't match, shadows that move when they shouldn't. I've started having the dreams again too, and I wake up feeling like something's watching me, like something followed me when I left. And sometimes when I look in the mirror, I catch a glimpse of that twisted smile just for a second before it's gone, but I know it's still there, waiting, watching. It's been a few months now since I left the house, and things have only gotten worse. The nightmares are more vivid, more intense. In them, I'm always back in the house, but it's different every time. Sometimes the walls are covered in black mold that pulses like it's alive. Other times the rooms are filled with decaying furniture, rotting and falling apart before my eyes. But the worst part is the presence. It's always there, lurking in the shadows, following me through the halls. I never see it, but I can feel it. A malevolent force that watches me, waiting for the right moment to strike. In the dreams, I can hear it breathing, a raspy, wet sound that makes my skin crawl. I always wake up just before it catches me, drenched in sweat, my heart pounding so hard I think it might burst. The waking hours are no better. I've started hearing voices, faint whispers that seem to come from nowhere. At first, I thought it was just the wind, or maybe my imagination, but they've become more persistent, more coherent. They call my name over and over, sometimes in a familiar voice, sometimes in one that's twisted and distorted. I've checked everywhere, under the bed, in the closets, even in the attic of my new place, but there's nothing, no explanation. The rational part of my mind insists it's just stress, that I'm still adjusting to everything that's happened. But the fear is something I can't shake. It gnaws at me, growing stronger with each passing day. My friends don't understand. They think I'm overreacting, letting my imagination run wild. "It's just an old house," they say. "You're safe now." But they don't feel what I feel. They don't see what I see. I started seeing a therapist, hoping it might help. I told her everything, from the house to the dreams to the mirror. She listened patiently, taking notes, nodding at the appropriate times. She suggested I might be suffering from post-traumatic stress, that the events at the house had triggered something deep in my subconscious. She recommended medication, meditation, anything to calm my mind. I tried it all, but nothing worked. The mirror, or what was in it, had changed me. I could feel it. I wasn't the same person I was before I inherited that cursed house. Something had been left behind, and it had latched onto me, feeding off my fear, growing stronger with each passing day. A few weeks ago, I decided to research the house, desperate to find some kind of explanation. The history was sparse, almost non-existent. It had been built in the late 1800s by a man named Elias Blackwood, a reclusive scholar with a penchant for the occult. The townsfolk at the time whispered about strange rituals, odd noises, and strange visitors coming and going at all hours of the night. The stories were vague, though, little more than local legends, but there was one incident that stood out: a disappearance. A woman, a young servant who had worked in the house, had vanished without a trace. There were no records of an investigation, no mention of her in any official documents. It was as if she had never existed. Except for one thing. In the attic, Among the few belongings left behind, there had been a journal, partially burnt, filled with ramblings about mirrors, dark reflections, and something trapped within them. The writing became increasingly erratic toward the end, and the last entry was almost unreadable, a single sentence scrawled over and over again. It's watching, it's waiting. The journal was lost to time, the house falling into disrepair after Blackwood's death. No one wanted it. It passed through a series of owners, each one staying for a short time before abandoning it. My great-uncle had been the last to live there, but he was already old and eccentric by the time he moved in. No one paid much attention to the oddities, chalking it up to his strange personality. But now I knew. I understood what he had gone through, why he had become so withdrawn, so paranoid. The house, or whatever was in it, had consumed him, just like it was consuming me. I don't sleep much anymore. I'm afraid of what I might see if I close my eyes for too long. The dreams are one thing, but the moments of waking terror are worse. I'll be sitting alone in my apartment, and suddenly the air will grow cold, and I'll feel that familiar sensation of being watched. I'll look into the reflection in the window or the screen of my phone, and there it is, that twisted smile, staring back at me. Last week I covered every mirror in my apartment, every reflective surface. It didn't help. I still see it, that other me, lurking just beyond the glass. It's always smiling, always waiting. I'm starting to lose track of time. Days blend into nights, and I can't remember the last time I felt rested or even remotely at peace. My therapist suggested I take some time off work, that I try to disconnect and find some solace. But there is no solace, not anymore. A few days ago, I noticed something new. My reflection isn't just smiling now, it's moving on its own. When I'm brushing my teeth, it lingers a moment too long after I've finished, staring at me with those cold, dark eyes. When I turn to leave a room, I'll catch it out of the corner of my eye, turning to face me, following me with that grin that's no longer just mine. I'm scared. I don't know how much longer I can hold on. I've started seeing it in other places now too. Store windows, puddles on the street, even in other people's eyes. It's everywhere and it's getting closer. The other night I had the worst dream yet. I was back in the house, but it wasn't empty this time. The rooms were filled with shadowy figures, all standing perfectly still, their faces hidden in darkness. But I knew they were watching me. I could feel their eyes on me, their breath cold on my skin. I tried to leave, but the doors were gone, the windows bricked over. I was trapped. The figures started to move, slowly at first, but then faster, closing in on me. I ran, but no matter where I went, they were always there, their whispering voices growing louder and louder until it was all I could hear. They were chanting something, a low, guttural sound that made my skin crawl. And then I saw it, the mirror, standing at the end of the hallway, its surface rippling like water. The figures pushed me toward it, their hands cold and rough as they shoved me closer and closer. I tried to resist, but I was powerless. I could see my reflection in the glass, distorted and twisted, that terrible smile stretched across its face. It reached out to me, its hand pressing against the glass from the inside, and then it spoke in that same dark voice that had haunted my dreams for so long. "Come back to me." I woke up screaming, drenched in sweat, my heart racing, but the terror didn't fade when I opened my eyes. Because when I looked around the room, I realized I wasn't alone. The shadows from my dream were there, lingering in the corners, watching me, and in the mirror I could see it, my reflection smiling at me, its hand still pressed against the glass. I don't know what to do anymore. I'm terrified of going back to sleep, but staying awake is just as bad. The lines between reality and the dream are starting to blur, and I can't tell what's real and what's not. The mirror is everywhere, and so is that smile. I can feel it getting closer, closing in on me, waiting for the right moment to take over. I'm scared that one day I won't wake up, that I'll be trapped in that house forever, just another shadow in the corner watching, waiting. I'm scared that when that day comes, I'll look in the mirror and see myself staring back, but it won't be me anymore. It'll be whatever was waiting in the dark all along. And when it finally steps out of the mirror, when it finally takes over, I'm scared that no one will notice the difference, because it'll be smiling just like I used to. And the worst part, I think I'm starting to smile back.